Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Live Label Free podcast. If you clicked on this episode, chances are you're intrigued by the title. How can eating more be perceived as restriction? I mean, isn't restricting all about eating less? And that's exactly what we're going to be unpacking today. When eating more is actually restriction and why you need to rewire it if you want to achieve the full life you so desire and deserve. Welcome to Live Label Free, the podcast where we talk about all things eating disorder recovery, autism, entrepreneurship, and so much more. I'm your host, Livia, and my mission is to inspire individuals from across the globe to live a life in which they feel fulfilled and free from limiting labels. I am so excited to have you here and cannot wait to dive into the episode. I think we all know eating disorders have really clever ways of making themselves into your life. When my eating disorder developed at the young age of 11, I was convinced I was just being healthy. When I resisted birthday cake at a party, I was convinced I was super disciplined. In contrast, when I ate more than I had planned or ended up binging, my eating disorder used this quote-unquote lack of control to convince me why I needed to hold on to it tighter. I mean, clearly I could not be trusted without my eating disorder. And this is exactly why I often ate more vegetables and high-volume foods before I committed to full recovery, to ensure I would eat less of the foods I was really craving and, frankly, my body really needed. Because if I ate the foods I was really craving, I'd be guilt-tripped and shamed by my eating disorder, which I believed at the time was a much more painful experience than having to resist the food in the first place. This is why extreme hunger can be one of the scariest occurrences when you're in recovery from an eating disorder. It's like your body completely takes over, so suddenly all the control you felt you once had vanishes. Because of this, it is very common to turn to your trusted safety mechanisms to try and gain control back. The safety mechanisms you've conditioned your brain to rely on are any behaviors that aim to limit or restrict the number of calories you are consuming. So these may include exercise to negate calories consumed, only eating at certain times to ensure you don't go over your allotted amount at the end of the day, only eating pre-portioned items to ensure you don't eat quote-unquote too much, comparing to ensure you eat less than others. And if this is something you struggle with, I highly recommend you listen to a recent podcast episode on comparison in eating disorder recovery, because in that episode I explain the biology behind why you compare and how you can get out of the comparison trap. And then another form of restriction is avoiding events due to the fear of certain triggers or trigger foods being present, and I actually share way more types of restriction and how to rewire them in my course Extremely Hungry to Completely Satisfied, which you can enroll in by visiting the link livelabelfree.com/extreme-hunger-course. And one of the forms of restriction I also talk about in the course, and I really dive deep into all the forms of restriction because in the end, Newton's third law states that for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. So if you want to beat extreme hunger and stop being so freaking mentally hungry and obsessed with food all the time, you need to address the root cause first, which is the restriction. So volume eating is another form of restriction because you are trying to reduce your hunger and in turn reduce the number of calories consumed. So like I just said, if you've ever taken a physics class, I'm sure you've heard of Sir Isaac Newton before. He's only one of the most influential figures in the history of science. And did you know that Mr. Newton was probably autistic too? I mean, that's another book that I want to write in the future about how to kind of thrive in business as an autistic person, because I think we have such a unique mind that is so misunderstood by society, and society tries to make us fit into a mold we would never supposed to fit into. So when we are able to embrace our unique mind and we stop trying to fit into a certain mold, we can create greatness. Well, anyways, thanks to Newton's genius mind, we are able to understand most of what we know about energy and motion using his 3 laws of motion. So, like his 3rd law states, which I explain like in depth in relation to restriction in my course, it states again, for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. And in the context of extreme hunger, as I was saying, the root cause of which is restriction, the more you engage in restriction, which, as you now know, includes loading up on those high volume foods like broccoli and light ice cream and protein bars instead of cookies, like all the replacement foods that I'm sure I don't need to tell you. The more that you're trying to like replace what you actually want with these replacement foods, the more intense your mental and physical, I mean, it depends on which one you have, but the more intense and the more extreme that hunger will become. Because again, the more the restriction swings one way, the more the hunger and obsession with food is going to swing the other way. So if you want to achieve that balance and stop thinking about food all the time and stop wanting to eat all the time, you have to stop restricting. Physically, you may feel full, like when you're engaging all these restrictive behaviors, like eating the pile of steamed broccoli instead of the pile of chocolate chip cookies you'd rather have, or like I said, the light ice cream. It's really important to recognize that satisfaction isn't just physical, because again, the steamed broccoli and the light ice cream and all the filler foods may like fill up your stomach, but do they actually satisfy you? No, otherwise you would not be listening to this episode. Otherwise you would not be at all interested in extreme hunger content. Otherwise you would not at all be following and trying to learn ways in which you can get rid of mental hunger and extreme hunger if you were satisfied, right? So it's really, really important to ensure mental satisfaction as well, because it's just as necessary as satisfying yourself physically. I mean, you can be full and like groaning and sitting on the couch and being, oh, I can't move. But if you are still thinking about food all the time and you still want to eat more food because your body still needs more food and more of specific kinds of foods, such as cookies and sugar and the most energy efficient foods to get you out of extreme hunger, you need to start honoring that hunger. And like I said, the more you eat the foods that don't satisfy you mentally, the stronger your mental hunger will become. And if you've experienced or are currently experiencing, which you probably are, otherwise you would not be listening to this podcast, you know that mental hunger is absolute torture. So again, in order to overcome all forms of extreme hunger and feel satisfied in every sense of the word, you must actually satisfy yourself in every sense of the word. Just trying to satisfy yourself physically is not enough. And even that, like now I'm thinking about it, I'm like, the brain is part of our physical body. So if you're actually not satisfying yourself mentally, you're actually not satisfying yourself physically either. Okay, that's just like, I'm like, whoa, epiphany. Anyways, my course, Extremely Hungry to Completely Satisfied, guides you every step of the way to feeling completely satisfied. I mean, that's why I called it that. So I really hope to see you in there. Again, you can learn more by visiting the link livelabelfree.com/extreme-hunger-course. And remember, because this is really important for you to know, for anyone that's been thinking about enrolling my course for a while now, but are like, I don't know if it's going to work or not, I do offer a 100% satisfaction guarantee. So all this means is that if you enroll in the course, put in the work, do the homework, take the steps, and you don't get any results, I'll give you a full refund. No questions asked. So what do you have to lose? Nothing. Duh. Okay, now go get in that course and I'll chat with you in the next episode, or I'll chat with you in the course if I see you in there. But bye-bye for now.